When talking about the best album of 2021, there's a lot of questions that have to be answered. If you guys have watched, an NFR review recently, you guys know how we do reviews. So we go into the album, we look at artist performance, we look at the content, we look at production, features, replay value, a bunch of different criterias that come as one and kind of give you an answer if, this album is actually quality. And the big thing for us is like, will this, stand the test of time? Because with a lot of albums, they come, they go, they make your rotation, but they don't necessarily stick. But in this conversation today, guys, we're going to be talking about what is the best album of 2021 so far. And there's a lot of great albums that have come out this year. There's a lot of major rollouts. So on that note as well, please subscribe if you have not already, because we will be keeping you updated with the biggest reviews of the year and all of the other releases that come out. So Lou, how do you feel about this? Because there's a lot of big releases, there's a lot of things that came out, and a lot of things that we were hyped for, but that didn't necessarily meet our expectations.
Yeah, so I feel like this is the best year for hip-hop since 2018, and that's because the mainstream's alive again, and also we're getting great underground releases too, so very action-packed. It's kind of the return after the pandemic. Everybody's ready to draw music, and a lot of artists did deliver. And thank you so much to our Patreon members who actually chose this episode. So the options for this week were what's currently the best rap album of 2021, which got 10 votes. Then we had top 10 rap verses of 2021 so far, which got 6 votes. And then finally, is underground rap music better than the mainstream, which got 6 votes. And if you guys want to actually have your say in our future episodes on every Wednesday, all you have to do is check out the Patreon links in our description, and you guys can have your say in our future content, which is always cool. And not only that, but shout out to Blaine Bush, who actually takes our comment of the week. And Blaine says, you guys talk about music I don't really care to listen to, and then after the video, I'll check out the actual song and get into it. If you guys have expanded my music playlist by a lot. Keep up this exact content. Thank you so much, Blaine. And that's kind of what we aspire to do here, is put you guys onto new music and also share the passion that we have for hip-hop together. So thank you, Blaine. And to start off this actual episode, man, there's so many contenders for the album of the year. So I think that's where we should start, is going through the contenders and then finally answering the question of what is the current best rap album of 2021. And honestly, I don't even know your answer, so we'll see if there's some surprises. But to start off, I think it's only fitting to talk about J.Cole's The Offseason, because this revived mainstream hip-hop for me. It came in May, and this was such a huge rollout. Not only that, but this was the return of Cole after 3 years, and I felt like with this album, he was stretching. He was warming up for something bigger, which is probably going to end up being the fall off. So how is this album stuck in your rotation?
It has a major place in my listening experience in 2021 for the reason that it came out in May. Like, it was one of the biggest, releases of the year, and it came first, even before Drake and Kanye. And the thing is that around May, there's a lot of different questions around the industry. Who was going to go first? Who was going to come out and break this silence that, was definitely caused by the pandemic? Because in 2020, we didn't really get any crazy big drops. There was a lot of good ones from the underground, but for the most part, the mainstream was quiet. So on that note, I feel as if my most played album from May to June was definitely J. Cole's The Offseason. Then after that, I had my time with, Isaiah Rashad's The House is Burning. I went through, Vince Staples' a self-titled EP. I had time with those.
It was an album. It wasn't an EP.
My bad. But regardless, I think that for the most part, the reason why I like it so much is because I didn't really get this type of J. Cole in the previous projects that I had heard from him, because KOD was more conceptual, For Your Eyes Only was more conceptual, and there's more of a looser feel. It feels as if he's having fun with it. He's stretching out his bars. He's stretching out what he could do vocally on certain songs. Plus, if you look at the diversity in the track list, you have songs like Amari, and then you have songs like Let Go of My Hand that's more traditional J. Cole. So I also like to see him experiment here, and the fact that this is the first, let's say album/mixtape that had features since Born Sinners, that was interesting to me, and it really grabbed my attention, because it was like, how is he gonna come out after releasing 3 albums with no features and then try and execute that on this new album? So how did you feel about it, and how did you like the new implementation of the features?
I loved it because J. Cole was back on his bars. He was, trying once again to prove that he's one of the best rappers in the game, and you got that with his witty punchlines. You got that with, double entendres like could put an M on your head, you Luigi brother now. Like,
yeah, there's a lot
some
of
people
stuff.
Found that corny. I actually like that bar. But apart from that, I also love the fact that Cole is being very boastful here. He has, that You Don't Know by Jay-Z energy through the production on 95 South. Shout out to Coleman and Boy Wonder for that beat. Phenomenal. Apart from that, I also love the kind of jazzy instrumentals you get on songs like Close or Let Go My Hand. And more than anything else, I just respect the fact that even though it's not conceptual, there kind of still is a message. And it's the fact that J.Cole, like he raps on the song Interlude, he says it could have gone up or down. And that's kind of him representing the fact that he could have, become a product of his environment or break out and actually become a leader in his environment. And that's what he's done here. And it kind of comes full circle when you think about, him describing traveling back and forth from, NC and New York. So it's cool to see it come full circle. And like I said, this is J. Cole stretching. It's him warming up. And he showed us that he can still put together a concise project. And I'm excited to see what the future holds for him.
Major release this year. But let's actually move on to Brockhampton's Roadrunner, New Light, New Machine. This dropped in April and was a massive release for us because when NFR had started doing our reviews, we didn't have criterias. And this was the first, album that we actually, used criterias for because it's a very hard album to digest. There's a lot that goes into it. And I think I want to start with the conceptual basis on this album because there's a lot to digest when you're talking about content matter. And, you and I have spoke about this on the review, but this feels kind of like, a whole therapy session for, the Brockhampton members and even Joba because he lost his father to a suicide situation, which is a very hard, situation to go through. There's obviously a lot of emotions and a lot of, unanswered questions that come with that. So it was really beautiful to see how they came together and created a concept album to not only, honor Joba's father, but kind of console Joba in a certain way. So how long did it take you to, digest this album and how is it stuck through your rotation?
This album clicked for me right away. I loved it from the beginning, and I admire how ear-bending the production is. It feels chaotic. You have so many elements at play. You have a lot of industrial sounds. You have beats like Chain On, where you actually have a loop, and then at the end of it, you get this sample from Wu-Tang Clan's Cream, and it's crazy how they're able to mesh all these elements together, make it sound cohesive. So shout out to Video Store, a producer duo made up of Romil Hamnani and Kevin Abstract, of course. Not only that, but I love how Joba got the spotlight here and really shined on songs like The Light, where you hear this grunge influence with the electric guitars and through his vocals, and he, gives you this intense imagery about how there's skull fragments in the ceiling after his father tragically, shot himself, and him kind of dealing with that pain, and also the message being about the light, finding this hope and actually, using that hope to cope with situations. And that light that Joba tries to find on this album is the same light that he wishes his father could have found. So I love this album, 13 songs, very concise, and every member had a role to play. If you look at Merlin Wood and what he was able to do with the refreshing vocals and very energetic verses. If you look at Bareface with what he was able to do on Jesus Lord, giving us a prayer with some lush vocals. Just everything was executed to a T, and I think this will go down as maybe a top 5 album of the year for me.
It definitely is in my top 10 list, and it's crazy because this is probably the best album when it comes to content matter for me, or at least, having that sort of thematic basis within it. It was, really well executed, and there's a very big reason why you have to listen to start to finish on this album. Like, you're going to see the progression of the thematic basis from, just the track list playing on. Like, at the half of that album, you're going to see why, that theme was implemented into the album, and you're going to see how well it was executed. So if you have not already listened to Roadrunner's New Light, New Machine, not Roadrunner's, Brockhampton's Roadrunner, New Light, New Machine, please do so. It is one of the best releases this year.
Probably their most mature project.
Oh, that's
for
sure. And you could see that. You could see how they were able to, really expand from the way that they had started, let's say, even with the Saturation series, because I feel as if that's like the first place where you really saw them, come together and create something that deep and like that thoughtful. So it's cool to see how they were able to, show their evolution on this album. Let's move on to another great fucking album this year, and it's Tyler the Creator's Call Me If You Get Lost. Man, I was so hyped when I saw that billboard go up and I called that fucking line. I knew what was coming, and the fact that already you knew what was going to come with Lumberjack because he started rapping again in this way that you didn't see in such a long time. You knew what to kind of expect with this album. So again, I'm going to ask you that same question. Did it meet your expectations, and how did it make your rotation up to now?
This album was phenomenal, man. This is definitely a huge album of the year contender, and I'm sure a lot of you guys still have it as your album of the year. And it's in my top 3, I'll say that. And I just love that Tyler the Creator is a jack of all trades. This guy produces everything, and the way that he came on this album, where he's kind of rapping predominantly, has the DJ drama narration. I love everything about it, and it's crazy how the rollout actually lived up to the quality of the album. Not only that, but I feel like Call Me If You Get Lost sets up atmosphere and creates setting better than any other album that I've heard this entire year, because I feel like I'm with Tyler and DJ Drama on a boat in Geneva, Switzerland. I feel like I'm right there with them, enjoying this luxury. And I also love the fact that Tyler reinvents himself with every album. If you look at what he did with Igor compared to now, it's the same storyline, you could say, because there's a love triangle, but he tackles it with different plot elements and also through a different standpoint musically, because Igor was more R&B and funk, and yes, you do have remnants of that on songs like Sweet I Thought You Wanted to Dance, but it's predominantly hip-hop. And look, to me, like I said, everything hit. If you look at the Japanese bamboo flute on How Wind Blows, if you look at the wind sound effects you get in that song, like I said, it really puts you on the scene, and it puts you in that album. You feel like you're part of that experience, and that's why it's one of my favorites of the year.
The soundscape on this album is fucking incredible, because as Lou said, you feel like you're in Geneva, Switzerland with these guys. Like you feel as if you're on a boat, you're on vacation, and it's a super breezy album. And again, talking about the track list and the sequencing, it's very interesting because Tyler kind of gives you the whole plot of the album from the start of the album.
Corso.
And then, once you start getting to Wilshire, everything comes to full circle and you start to understand, why this album was created. And it's always, the concept of the love triangle. Tyler tackled it with Igor, and he tackled it in a different way with Call Me If You Get Lost, but there was different branding behind it. There was a different sort of imaging towards it. There was also some implement of comedy within the album, because if you look at some of the skits with, let's say, the salmon skit where he's on the train and he's talking to the train, to the stewardess, that's fucking hilarious. And that's stuff that I love to see Tyler dive into. And the fact that I didn't get much rapping on Igor, and the fact that he was able to come back here and deliver a complete hip-hop album and execute it in that way was super impressive, because Tyler had different options here. Either he follows up with something that's more neo soul or has more of a pop aesthetic like he did on Igor, or he comes together and he puts together a hip hop album like he did with Wolf. So that's what I was a fan of. I was a fan of him, not giving a fuck about, all the critical, success that he had gotten with Igor, and kind of changed his sound once again.
Doing what he wants. And you have to condemn him on the fact that he always brings a new character to life with his albums, and that really immerses you into the narrative of it. And by the end of it, you're left wondering, like, okay, he's talking about luxury and his lifestyle for a lot of it, but deep down, the message is like, no matter how much excess I have, no matter how much material possessions I have and the ability to travel, yes, they help me cope with my pain, but money won't buy me love in the end.
Yeah.
And at the end, he's a loser at love like he was with Igor. And I love the story. I love the music. So definitely a huge album of the year contender. But let's now talk about something that I thought wouldn't be as good as it was. And that's Nas's King's Disease 2. So going into this, after you heard it, did you know right away that this was Nas getting his mojo back?
Well, I don't think it was ever lost. I think that for the most part, Nas has a very underrated discography, because people kind of have the curse of looking at Illmatic, and anything that's kind of under it is like, no, that's not good, or no, that's not making my rotation. Like, Nas has released, the best debut album of all time, in my opinion. Well, it's debatable. There's a couple of other rappers in that conversation, but this was just like, whoa, he's aging like fine wine. He's not stopping. And with King's Disease 2, I maybe expected it to be on the same level as King's Disease, but this is fucking incredible. And this is actually this is making a very strong case for me for my album of the year.
Is this your album of the year?
I don't know yet, man.
You don't know yet? So you're going to tell us by the end after we talk about the next album too?
Because the thing is that I have a couple of them in rotation, but it's like, Nas's King's Disease 2. Well, I'll talk about myself. I'll save it for the end of the episode. But I'm talking about KD2. I just feel as if, he upgraded everything from the first installment. The rapping, the Hit Boy production was much better on this. Especially that there was no fucking pop features on this. Like, that was the biggest thing for me, was like, I love to see Lauryn Hill on this. Like, I love to see someone like Charlie Wilson on this. This record feels like a Nas album. This feels like, you're listening to pure luxury and wisdom. You feel like you're listening to someone talking that has been through all of these experiences, and from start to finish, Nas is going to offer you, knowledge to implement into your own life, like parallels that, you could dive into, and ideologies that you could try to understand and, try to resonate with. So that's what I fucked with about this album. It feels as if, it's a lesson. It feels as if it's almost me going to school and me going to learn something. So why do you love it, and why do you think that it's one of the best releases of the year so far?
So after digesting the album, I was really back and forth between King's Disease 2 and Call Me If You Get Lost for my album of the year. I was really juggling back and forth. I was struggling to decide, but to see which one I place over which, I don't know. I think I'd probably give it to Call Me If You Get Lost, but King's Disease 2 is amazing just because it's like, if you look at King's Disease, the original,
Yeah.
Nas felt more meditative on there. He felt more peaceful in his cadences. It was kind of more subdued. But with this one, he's putting way more effort into his rhymes, and you can hear the confidence again. And I feel like this is his most inspired sounding album since Life is Good in 2012. I think it's his best since that album. And a big part of that comes, through Hit Boy's production, which is so nostalgic and takes you back to this 90s era through the beautiful samples that you get, the jazzy elements, the trumpets in some songs. And what I love too is that Nas is showing that he can adapt to any climate here, man.
That's
because
facts.
not only is he rapping on these old school flavored beats, but he can show you that he can rap really well on these trap beats as well. And Hit Boy is a master of, giving him this palette of sounds and making him go crazy over everything. One standout for me was his verse on EPMD 2, where he has this crazy internal rhyme scheme. I'll actually read it out. Pull up with the ghost like a haunted house. She getting scary. Blood on my hands like Carrie. Might walk through a cemetery to see where hip-hop is buried. I said it was dead, but it faked its death like Machiavelli. Red splatter. You see the letters in red splatter look like sauce and spaghetti. Like, it's mind-blowing shit. And this is what Nas did for me. He revived that feeling of a lyrical hip-hop album that I would have heard in the 90s. And I loved everything about it. And also, shout out to the song Nobody, because that gives you introspection on where Nas is in his life right now. Because he's saying, like, one of my biggest dreams right now would be to move somewhere and not be recognized, to have that freedom of my own private life. And Lauryn Hill's feature on that is fucking epic.
Oh, it is. It's definitely one of the best verses of the year, let alone features. And the fact for me with that Lauryn Hill feature was like, you don't get that feature often.
No.
Like she'll never come back for just anyone. And the fact that she came back for King's Disease 2, says a lot, because this album feels like a classic hip-hop album. This feels like something that's going to stay within my rotation for a very fucking long time. And I want to shout out Count Me In, because that is my favorite song of the year, actually. This has been my most played song of the year so far, and we'll get into maybe a piece of content on that at some point. But Count Me In, those two verses are absolutely fucking stupid. Like, you hear, Nas just talking about how, he's on a different level on the fact of knowledge. He's just looking at stuff, from a 4D view. He's looking at stuff, from a view that you can't necessarily see with the human eye, and that you have to feel, through feeling and spirituality and experience. Also talking about the fact that you can't kill him with over-the-counter shit that these pharmaceutical companies are feeding you. So it was just like, whoa, okay, like it's sparking all of these conversations for me, and that's what Nas does best. He gives you food for thoughts. And
fucking going strong,
yeah,
man.
I don't know
Almost
how
at
he
50
does
years
it.
old,
I don't
bro.
know how he does it, man. This guy does not stop, and is definitely, I think it's safe to say
one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, he's a top 5 rapper of all time, and I'll make that fucking conversation any day of the
sir.
week. But let's actually move on to Kanye West's Donda.
Yes,
This
sir.
was, if you guys have been following NFR, you guys know how stressed we got throughout this whole roll up, because we were waiting for albums, we did live streams, we did videos.
Are
we
you
were
surprised it's out right now?
Oh, I still am, absolutely. And I remember that Sunday morning, thank God I did not come out with you guys on that Saturday night, because the boys ended up going out. I was supposed to go out, but I ended up going to sleep like super fucking early because I wasn't feeling too well. And then I wake up at 7:45 the next morning, and I'm looking at Twitter. Donda out in 15 minutes at 8 a.m. Eastern time. What the fuck? Gets to 8 o'clock. I'm like, no, this is actually happening. The albums actually show up on Spotify and on Apple Music. And I remember I had to go to fucking Nick's house and wake him up. I had to wake him up because he wasn't waking up on the phone. He was probably going to sleep until 11.
That was a blessing, bro. That was a random blessing.
Dude, I can't deal with the fact that he teased us for that long and he actually delivered on the quality. Like, I really wasn't expecting Donda to feel that good, because the listening parties, they were all right. I mean, there wasn't a lot to, let's say grab from, because you weren't able to listen to the track sequencing or let's say, the final mixing and mastering decisions. But once you get this album, man, it's a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah.
And it's like one of the best Kanye albums that I've gotten in years, to be honest with you.
And I feel like this whole artistic movement, from the performance art at the actual listening parties to the message and the way that he's using music to actually deal with personal turmoil in his life, to me, the whole Donda experience, seeing the music evolve, all of that, that's masterful. That's what the masterpiece truly is this artistic movement rather than the actual full collection of songs. Because as much good things as I have to say about this album, which I'll get into, I think the track list is still bloated. I still think that songs like Remote Control and OK OK are some of the worst in Kanye's career. I really don't like those songs at all, and I feel like they don't contribute to the actual message. But speaking of that message, Kanye's channeling the spirit of his mother. He's also leaning on God to gain clarity and kind of cope with the loss of his marriage, which is probably the second biggest loss of his life after his mother Donda had passed away. And I love how vulnerable Kanye gets on here, and I feel like this is the realest he's ever been. And that vulnerability reminded me of 808s and Heartbreak, but here he's being way more expressive, talking about suicidal thoughts on a song like Jesus Lord, talking about how he's scared of losing his family unit and of his kids resenting him on a song like Off the Grid. That content matter from Kanye was so refreshing to hear. And if you look at the sounds he was introducing here, he went back to old albums like Yeezus. If you look at a song like God Breathe with the very avant-garde production. So he knocked it out of the park for me. And it's cool to see that he got like 30 feature artists to all talk about the same message, and an important message at that, and it's being spiritually connected to God. So do you feel like he pulled that off really well?
Absolutely, it was perfectly executed, and the fact that all of these live experiences while listening to the listening parties allowed you to sort of understand the album before you actually got it was a big part in my listening ship, because going through the whole track list, at times at surface level you won't necessarily understand the meaning of tracks, but you have to kind of go through it and kind of work your way through it and understand what Kanye's trying to say. And I love the fact that he's trying to bring such a positive, message into hip hop right now, because a lot of rappers will, feel the need to go into braggadocious rap or go into more of the luxury talk or go into more of the money talk. But with Kanye, this is much different. This is him, talking about what really, what really matters, and that's your connection to God and being connected to a higher power, and really advancing your life spiritually, because it'll do wonders for you in the long term. So I love the fact that he used this platform for that. And as you said, you have like 30 plus artists on here talking about God. Like, that was never seen before. And, they're all talking about these past events that have transpired in their life that allowed them to, watch God's work and allowed them to understand what was going on behind the scenes with, not being able to necessarily see what's in front of you, but feel what's in front of you. Like, that's the big important message of this album. So it's definitely an album of the year contender for me.
Probably not top 5, but it's in there.
It's definitely in there though. But let's actually talk about Little Simz's Sometimes I May Be Introvert.
Sometimes I might be introvert.
So,
which actually cool about that title is that if you look at the letters
Simbi.
of each word, it spells out Simbi, which is actually her nickname. And I'll say this: it's cool that this came out within the 2-week span that Donda came out and that Certified Lover Boy came out, and it set up an underdog story because, of course, it's ballsy to release an album amidst 2 of the biggest albums of the entire year in any genre. And she puts out this album, and it ends up being better than both Drake and Kanye's album. And to me, after a few listens, this is my album of the year.
I think that this is like tied with me for King's
Now, you
Disease
got to give
2.
me one, man. You got to give me an album of the year.
I really can't, because the thing is that I'm kind of getting such value and such rich production from both of these albums that I kind of feel as if they're almost the same project in a certain way, because you're getting the rich messaging, you're getting that luxurious fucking beautiful cinematic production by Inflo and then Hit Boy on King's Disease 2. So for me, it's like, which one am I going to toss up with? The only thing that's going to tell me though, I'm going to have to see how both of these albums reach my rotation in the fourth quarter. I have to see how both of these albums are going to sit with me.
But as of right now, if you had to give one,
King's Disease 2.
Okay, fair enough.
I think that I've had more time to sit with it. I think that I've understood the album a bit more than sometimes I might be Introvert, because it's a very complicated album. There's a lot to go into. There's a lot of different ideologies here that she's just telling you. Like, the whole point of the album almost feels like she accepts her loneliness and she actually strives by being an introvert. She strives by being on her own and kind of finding power within that. So I love the messages within that. Not only that, but going to a song like Woman, that's a beautiful song because she's empowering other women to feel confident in themselves and to strive for greatness and to tread waters in, areas that, might not be treadable right now for, females. So it was beautiful to see how she was able to create this soundscape and deliver such rich messaging. And I think that's what I love about it. And the fact that Little Simz is from the UK, a market that's exploding right now and that's really pushing, a lot of narratives forward in the hip hop genre as a whole, I love what she's doing because it's allowing me to get into other UK artists, and it's allowing me to sort of digest other, let's say flows and deliveries and accents that I may have not been able to, digest back then. So between both of them, between King's Disease 2 and Little Simz, because I think maybe that's your 1 and 2 right now, where would you put what, and why do you think one is above the other at this point?
There's a big gap for me. Honestly, sometimes it might be an Introvert is easily the best rap album I've heard all year, and it's because of how groundbreaking it is. It's because of the use of these live instrumentals, which you don't really get live instruments in hip-hop albums anymore, and it's such an important key because it's at the root of hip-hop, and this was groundbreaking in message. I think that it's the most cohesive album. If you look at the way that one song transitions to the next, if you look at the interludes, where you kind of have this fairy godmother type character that's actually, it sounds like it's Simbi's inner voice. It's kind of her guiding her through this journey, and the whole concept of this album is, it's Simbi kind of navigating throughout the journey of her life and discovering who she wants to be, not only as a person, but also as an artist, because
Facts.
those two entities kind of feel separate for her. And I love all the orchestral arrangements you hear on this album. I love how you can go from that to a minimalist beat on a song like 2 Worlds Apart, where you have a beautiful Smokey Robinson sample that she's rapping at beautifully. And I think that fuck all that talk about best UK lyricist, best female lyricist. Fuck all that. She's one of the best rappers in the game right now.
That is facts.
And you can't box her into anything.
That is facts.
And I think that the reason why I put this over King's Disease 2 is the production's masterful. It feels like I'm in a James Bond movie. It feels like, Bond theme
feels
music.
luxurious.
Not only that, but performance-wise, her performance is totally diverse. If you look at, the songs where she's getting super introspective on I Hate You, I Love You, she's talking about how her father actually abandoned her and how that's affected her, but how she also sympathizes with him. So there's so much positivity here. And what's crazy is that she empathizes with a lot of people. Even on a song like Little Q Part 2, she's speaking through the perspective of her cousin and how he was stabbed, but he sympathizes with the boy who stabbed him because it's not the problem of the community. It's about the higher powers, the elite, the government. And that's what I feel is what's masterful about this album, is that, yes, it's personal to her, but this is an album for the people, because myself as a white man, I'm able to connect to a lot of these stories that, like, for example, just the way that she's able to not only dive into her own problems and, get that personal introspective out, but also the fact that she's the voice for the voiceless. People's stories that don't get to be heard, she's providing the context for that. And to me, it's just mind-blowing. And also, on a poetic standpoint, the way that she's tackling these verses, the way that you have songs also like Rolling Stone, where you have this UK grime flow, so diverse to me, and it's really night and day. This is a groundbreaking hip-hop album for me.
No, it's a groundbreaking hip-hop album for sure. And as I said, like, I'm going to need some time to be able to see which one makes my rotation on a bigger, deeper level, because there's going to be some stuff in here that I may have not picked up on my first, second, third, or fourth listen. Like, I'm going to need some more time to digest this new album, and I'm going to see, like, there's a lot of great projects that are coming in, into the year and making some groundbreaking moves. Like, 2021 has been interesting, to say the least. And let me ask you one more question before we end this off today. Whose album that hasn't dropped yet do you feel as if could make a push for an album of the year contender?
Yeah,
like just off the...
We'll probably make a whole video on that at one point, but definitely Kendrick Lamar. I mean, I think that anytime that he drops, you can expect a masterpiece, because he's never given us anything short of that. But like I said earlier, I think that Little Simz will end up having probably the best rap album of the year. I know it's a bit pessimistic to say that right now. I'm hoping that there's better albums that drop, but she set the bar so fucking high, and it's a message that connects to people from any kind of demographic. Like this is an album for humans, because anyone can actually connect to it and see the genius behind it. But I'll flip the question back to you. And what? So you're sticking with King's Disease 2, right?
King's Disease 2 for now.
What could top it, you think?
First of all, I think sometimes I might be Introvert might top it for me. I have to see again. The time that it spends in my rotation is very important for me. But GID's, the Forever Story. That's an album I'm fucking waiting for, because yes, obviously you guys probably know Kendrick Lamar is my favorite of all time, and I'm such a massive fan of his catalog. But I really do think that JID is one of the most impressive artists in the industry right now when it comes to flow, cadence, storytelling, the ability to put together, double entendres, and the ability to, use such, these quirky, quick flows on these quirky, quick beats. It's really cool. It's energizing, and I want to see the way that he's going to be able to follow up, from DiCaprio too, because that was more of a showcase of his skill, whereas if the Never story was more conceptual, where he was talking about, his past days in Atlanta and him going through, his trials and tribulations. But I want to see the way he's going to be able to follow up, because this is going to be, the third, let's say, massive project in his career. And the thing is that Para 2, his mixtape is fucking phenomenal as well. And I just don't think that...
He's been on a run.
Oh, he can't stop. He's literally one of the best, artists in the industry right now, and someone I'm definitely looking forward to drop.
Also, a few shout-outs to Boldy James' Bo Jackson.
That's facts.
Another shout-out to Rome Streets and DJ Muggs' Death and the Magician. Amazing album.
Conway the Machine's La Machina is up there as well. I'd probably even say Isaiah Rashad's The House is Burning. Vince Staples' is self-titled mixtape. We'll call it a mixtape.
It's an album, though.
Okay. Vince Staples is up there for me. What else do we have? I think that's pretty much there for this year.
There's definitely others that have been in our rotation, but those are the main ones. So you guys got our takes. You know that my favorite, or at least what I think the best rap album of the year is so far, and that's sometimes that might be Introvert. For Ant, it was King's Disease 2.
Yes,
but
sir.
let us know in the comments, guys, what is your rap album of 2021 so far? We love interacting with you guys, and we're curious to hear your opinions, so let us know. And like we said earlier, we'll be keeping you guys updated with every major release, if that's, pre-hype content before the album drops, and of course, after every album drop that we appreciate and have time to digest, we will be delivering all those album reviews, so stay tuned for all of that, and we'll see by the end of the year what ends up making that top 10 list, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of different albums in this conversation, guys, but thank you so much for watching this video, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for watching the video. It's always a pleasure doing content for you guys. Listen, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, because we're doing album reviews, and we actually have our series called Everything We Know, where we take you guys through the whole album rollout of the hottest releases of the year. Not only that, guys, but our Patreon plan is now live. You guys can access that in the bio. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.